Well, Jim Benning has come out today and said, "Oh, we're not trading Brock Besser. Why would you think that? We're not looking at trading Brock Besser." So the odds are that they're not looking at it right now. And honestly, why would they be? They're going into a play-in series. So it's not like they can make a trade right now anyways. So we'll see if it's semantics later. We'll see if once the season's officially done and we reach the off season in October, whether or not Benning goes, "Whoops, we traded him." Oh well. Or if he means this and if it's going to go away. Brock Besser has taken more criticism that I've seen among Canuck fans than a lot of other players. Now, Tyler Myers has taken a share of criticism. There are others, but Besser takes it, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. And yet, you do wonder, like, does management still believe in Brock? And there are some criticisms to be had for sure, but I think it gets overblown. So he signed his deal in 2016, 2017, and they signed him. He played 9 games, 4 goals and assists, and 5 points. And they signed him in part because of family related issues related to his dad, and so that he had some money to help out. And I thought that was a nice gesture by the Vancouver Canucks. So coming out of that season, things look good. 2017, 2018, played 62 games, 29 goals, 26 assists, 55 points. He finished second in Calder voting. May very well have finished first in Calder voting had he played the whole season. But that's where I can understand a criticism. That is one thing with Brock Besser that I'll agree with. He doesn't stay healthy for a full season. 2018, 2019, 69 games, 26 goals, 30 assists, 56 points. So 3 less goals, 1 more point, 7 more games. Pretty consistent. This season, things change a bit. 57 games played, 16 goals, 29 assists, 45 points. Plays 12 less games, and of course, he has an injury problem again this season. He has 11 less points over those 12 less games and has 10 less goals. And right away, fans are all about the goals. But when I'm listening to NHL radio and it's like, well, it looks like he probably wouldn't have had 20 goals, I start yelling at the radio, well, he was injured, and if he'd played 82 games, he easily would have had 20 goals. But it was kind of being made to sound like, maybe he's not fitting in. Maybe Brock Besser just isn't really in the long-term future of the Canucks. Maybe he's not that good. And they were talking about, well, yeah, he had almost 30 goals his rookie season, but since then, 197 games played, 75 goals, 86 assists, 161 points. I will call attention to, for anybody who doesn't realize, I'm wearing a Brock Besser jersey. I will admit to being a huge supporter of Brock Besser for the whole time he's been a Canuck, and I believe in him. And I think that if they traded him, I think they're going to regret it, because he's going to end up having a healthy season. You know that. He's going to end up being healthy the year after he leaves Vancouver. He'll score 35 goals minimum, and all of a sudden he'll be like, look, he's a great goal scorer. Whoops. So if you prorate out his goals over his first 3 years, if he'd played a full 82 games on the rate he was scoring, his first year 38.3, second year 30.9, and this year 23. And again, he did struggle to score goals in his last, I think it was 12 games. I think he had 1 goal in his last 12 games played. And I understand the frustration with that, but he's also still really young. Now, we can look at his contract and say, well, for $5.875 million for 2 more years and he can't stay healthy, maybe you move on. My answer to that is, you're 3 years into his career. Maybe you don't move on. And if you're going to argue that this is too much money for the Canucks and you're not going to be able to keep Toffoli, my answer is you may not need to keep Toffoli. So looking at next season, your top 6 could be Miller, Pettersson, Besser on one line, Pearson, Horvat, and Virtanen on the other. And that could be your top 6. Jake Virtanen took that next step this year. Jake Virtanen is a restricted free agent this upcoming offseason, and I think he's a 20-goal scorer. With that top 6, you have 6 guys who can score 20 goals. 6. You have 6 that can score 20. I would argue Pettersson can hit 30. Besser can hit 30. Miller, 25. You've got a pretty solid top 6 right there. And so I don't think Besser is the problem. So the big speculation is the Canucks have cap issues coming up, and they do. Now, here's some of the cap problems, and we're going to look at this. Eriksson has 2 more years left at $6 million. Yep, 2 more years. 2. If it was 1, we wouldn't have a cap problem. But because it's 2, we absolutely have a cap problem in Vancouver. Brandon Sutter, $4.375 million for 1 more year. So I don't know that the Sutter contract is all that prohibitive. Maybe you get like a 50% retention and you trade him. I don't know. Roussel, $3 million for 2 more years. Beagle, $3 million for 2 more years. They may regret those contracts. Myers, $6 million till 2024. I like Tyler Myers. I think Myers has been a huge benefit to the Canucks blue line. Look, they were 7th in winning percentage in the West this season. They were moving up in the standings. So we can complain about that. We can talk about and include Ferland at $3.5 million for 3 more years. We can argue about the contracts, but the results on the ice have been good so far, in that it feels like they're making incremental steps towards being a playoff team every year. But where Canuck fans are going to get frustrated is if these contracts, and look, you got 6, 10, 13, 16, 22, about $26 million between those 6 players. $26 million between those 6 players. That is a lot of money for those 6 players. And while Myers has been, pretty key player on that blue line, the other 5, not really key contributors and not really guys that you would think, well, $20 million to those 5 guys is probably good. Ferland, it hasn't worked out due to injuries. And again, I have my top 6 there. I don't see Ferland in it. So if Ferland's good to go, good to come back and play, $3.5 million for 3 more years isn't necessarily that bad, but he's probably on the 3rd line. The Canucks, and at some point I'll do a video where we discuss it, they may have one of the more expensive bottom 6s in the NHL. And that's a problem. It's a problem when you do have other teams in the league who have excellent 4th lines that are also cheap. And all of those millions of dollars, they start to add up. Like, I don't mind Beagle at 3. I don't mind Roussel at 3. But both of them at 3 is probably going to be a problem. Because once we get into other problems they have, it adds up. Now, they have $18 million in cap space once this season's officially over. So what's the problem? And then they have $40.3 million in cap space for 2021. They don't have a problem. And then they do. So the recapture for Luongo is $3.03 million until 2022. And Canuck fans hate it. Canuck fans get so mad, so riled up. We shouldn't have this. This shouldn't be a problem. Why are we the only team? No. The Luongo contract was designed by Mike Gillis to get around the salary cap. It was designed to keep him at an artificially low cap hit when he was making a lot more money than that. Now, the fact that Luongo's retired at the end of it, which we all knew he would, we all knew when he signed that contract he wasn't going to play till the end of it, but Canuck fans at the time were all winking going, hey, we got around the cap, look at that. That's a pretty good cap hit for Luongo. We're doing really well. Boy, we hosed the NHL on that one. And then the NHL retroactively changes the way penalties work for this kind of thing. And so the Canucks are on the hook. And I understand that $3.03 million makes Canuck fans angry. But when they did it, I went, that's fair. It's fair because at the time that contract was signed, it was to get around the salary cap. Absolutely. Mike Gillis trying to get around the cap. And creating more problems, which is what Gillis contracts did. And now Benning's contracts may very well have the same effect. Now, the Spooner buyout has 1 more year left at $1.03 million in effect. I don't think that one's a problem. I don't. I think that the Spooner one, $1 million for this year, I don't think that's a big deal. But they have some serious RFAs this summer. Virtanen, how much does he get? Mott, probably about the same amount of money for Tyler Mott. Gaudette. How much is Gaudette going to want? McEwen looked very good. I think McEwen's earned a spot in that bottom 6 and may make one of these other expensive contracts on the left completely expendable. And Stetcher, to qualify him, I think he's at $2.4 million, so they need to qualify him at a high number with that cap space and the issues they're going to have going forward. I have thought the whole way through, Stetcher, they may not qualify him. He may leave as an unrestricted free agent. They're unrestricted free agents for this summer: Toffoli, Tanev, Fantenberg, Levo, and Markstrom. So let's say Markstrom says, I'll come back and play. I only want $5 million. Great. Tanev says, I want to come back and play. I'll take $3 million. Great. You're now down to $10 million in cap space for next year. And you're likely eating into the cap space you're going to have for 2021 when things get interesting. And of course, you still have to sign Virtanen, Gaudette, McEwen. Toffoli gets priced out pretty quick. Fantenberg is on the board as a UFA. If he wants to come back, he'll come back on a cheap contract, I would think. He's been decent as a depth defenseman for Vancouver. Wouldn't be a problem to bring him back. But the apocalypse arrives next year. Not this one that we're going through right now is different. The real apocalypse is both Pettersson and Hughes are due next summer. They're both going to take a lot of money. So that $40 million in cap space, are we willing to say that half of it's going to go to Pettersson and Hughes? Say $20 million for the two of them? And they're going to be worth their money. But you look at Pettersson, you look at Hughes, and if you as a Canuck fan right now are hyping them up big time, like we did with Brock Besser, like we've done with Bo Horvat, like we've done with others, you can't come back in a year and say, well, they're not worth that much because we hyped them up so much. They will be worth that much in all likelihood. And Thatcher Demko is up as well. So if the Canucks let go of Markstrom and Demko has a really good season as a starter, that could create more problems than keeping Markstrom and having Demko remain as the backup or splitting starts. You may be able to get a better contract out of Demko that keeps you in line rather than if you don't. And yet again, if you keep Markstrom, then you've got this big cap hit there as well. Levy is due next summer. If Levy comes in and has a good season, he could be argued in favor of having a raise. And Brogan Rafferty. Canuck fans really want to see what Rafferty can do. Maybe this playoffs, maybe next year. And again, they're all due. And then UFAs that summer, Edler, Sutter, Pearson, and Berchi. If Pearson goes, who replaces him in the top six? And if your answer is Podkolzin, I like your optimism. Because Podkolzin should be coming over next summer or next fall. And for Vancouver, that would be potentially huge, right? If Podkolzin's as good as advertised, that could be fantastic. But again, the Canucks are going to have a cap problem because Pettersson and Hughes are both due next summer. So the whole thing is this. If we're going to look at the Canucks cap problems they're going to have next year, I don't think Besser's $5.875 million is a huge problem. Yes, he underachieved this year and he got hurt. You trade him out, you could look like a moron because you have to get somebody back who's going to replace, if you're giving up that scoring and you're saying, well, we'll keep Toffoli at, say, $5 million, you're only saving $875,000. So let's say you get rid of Besser, you keep Toffoli at $5 million. Let's say Toffoli says, I'll stick around for $4 million. You're saving $1.875 million. Great. Who do you get back for Besser? Because I've seen people say, well, just trade Besser for a top four defenseman. Okay, how much are you paying that top four defenseman? Because we're already in cap hell. You're now going to keep Toffoli. You're going to bring in a top four defenseman. You're going to jettison your young forward in order to keep Toffoli, bring in a top four defenseman, and potentially have a massive problem with your cap next summer because of this boondoggle you got over here. Yeah, the Loui Eriksson contract is the big problem. The Loui Eriksson contract is the one that at $6 million per for the next 2 years absolutely cuts him off at the knees. And I'm not sure how you fix that because next summer is really where D-Day strikes. It's not this summer. This summer is going to be, well, this fall is going to be interesting. But honestly, if they trade Brock Besser, when this channel started 4 years ago, I was not a Benning fan. And I was very much anti-Benning. And then he made some moves that turned out to be pretty smart. And I was gradually won over to being a fan of his with the way things have gone over the last couple of years. The contracts are problematic. They are. His trading has been pretty solid and his drafting has been solid as well. If they give up Besser, and if they try to go for it next year, if they try to make it so, we're contenders in 2021, and if it ends up that they're not thinking ahead and they're not planning out their roster beyond next year, I'm going to be very, very disappointed, and I might very well have to change my opinion on Mr. Benning and the job he's done in Vancouver. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And I really hope the Canucks do the right thing. I think with the young core that they have, there is a really, really promising future here. And yes, Maybe at some point Vancouver ends up being a Stanley Cup champion, though I highly doubt it, and I'm not holding my breath because I've waited 40 years and I've kind of given up. But hey, for the youngins out there watching, maybe it does happen and maybe they prove me wrong. I would love to be proved wrong. That'd be great. I would like to see Besser remain part of that team because I do think that he's going to be a 30 goal scorer in the NHL. I think this year was a down year for him goal wise. I think he was trying to set up plays a lot, trying to set up Pettersson quite often, and he was trying to make pretty passes. And I think he goes back to goal scoring. I consider what he did to be similar to what Patrick Laine was doing in Winnipeg this year, where he became a better all-around player. And I think Laine will be a better goal scorer next season coming out of it. I think Brock could be a better goal scorer next season coming out of it as well. I certainly hope it's with Vancouver. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon.